growth. Taking the facts and figures at that time, we opted for complete liberalization, but that was not looking behind the crisis coming along, and we are dragged back to that 3% growth. So that becomes a policy choice that will come along. I'd like to take the second part of it, which is going to be 15 minutes. I'll ask our speakers 3 to 5 minutes each on something that is disturbing the world markets. 2 articles appeared recently regarding some manufacturing going back to technology countries, some production moving out from India, China, going back to the States because of new technologies that have come in, because of new production methods that have come in, that they really don't have to go offshore. Those activities could be manufactured onshore. I just want to ask the panel, does that disturb in one way or the other the international market scene? It referred to some technology in terms of replications that you really have to go and manufacture that in China. American shoes could be manufactured in America using that technology, etc., etc. Quite interesting reading, quite scary as well for countries that are technology dependent. Does that disturb the I don't know, global market for emerging markets? I'll start with you, Seth.
Okay. If you allow me, I would like to say a few things on the other issues as well.
Please.
We start by openness. I think there's often, one often makes the dichotomy between autarky and openness, where openness is understood as export-led growth. And I think it's a big mistake to do that, because I would agree with Jan that openness is not only export openness, but it's also import openness, and the issue is more outward oriented. And I think that what we heard today about the textile exports, that's a nice example. Because if you strive to qualify for the AGOA rules by being allowed to import, there's intermediate products in order to be able to export more. This is one thing, sort of an export-led growth view. Or if you stick to the existing rules and you try to produce that at home and try to establish a vertically integrated industry, you will certainly have a greater effect on employment, you certainly have a greater effect on value added, so that at the end of the day it could well be more beneficial. Now, something about the rules from the Uruguay round. I think it's not an issue rolling back, because that's just a dream and all. And I think one has to realize that the Uruguay round rules or agreement leave quite some space to do something, and that space has not been used. Like in the subsidy agreement, for example, there's space for environment-related subsidies. There are disease exceptions. The tariffs, there's water, you can use that. So there's a wide range of things that you can do which is still allowed and it's not being used. Then about the specific sectors, there was an argument about the commodity prices, and it's often been argued that the commodity sector is not a road to development, and that anyway the perspective on prices are bad. But I think one needs to make a distinction. I think the perspective of food prices are certainly up. I think that the perspective for base metal prices are certainly down. Because if you think about this so-called super cycle driven by China, especially infrastructure investment in China, the Chinese cannot continue like that. So you certainly have a downward move. document. Now in energy, I think it's very important to realize that there are new sources of energy brought into the market, like shale gas and so on, so that, and biofuels and all of that, so that there's an increase in the supply that will meet the increase in demand. So I think it's not so clear. It depends very much on the industry. But let me say something about this reshoring. I think reshoring is not a technology issue. I think reshoring is very much an issue of an increase in the oil price, which makes it quite expensive to ship the intermediate products to China and to ship the final products back to the United States. And then it's an issue of wages and of labor laws in the United States. Because if you look at where the reshored industries are located, these are located in those states of the United States where labor law is very weak and where you can introduce a two-tier wage structure, which means that those engaged in the reshored parts of the industry are paid only half of the already low wage, I guess, of the others. So I think it is very... It's good in the sense that for the United States that it creates employment, but as an industrial strategy, it doesn't really make much of a difference.
I'm not an expert on reshoring, so, but I forgot to answer to Robin, because we are economists and sometimes, according to our theories, the mainstream theories, we have an obsession with growth, and we don't look at the rest of the economy, at the structure and the income distribution. I think this has to change. We have to bring together theoretically, empirically, and politically income distribution and growth. And growth is not all. Sometimes income distribution or better income distribution, more equality can increase growth. Sometimes the opposite may be true. But then that is not necessarily a bad thing. Then richer strata in the economy or society have a little bit less or less increases and the others have more. So overall that might be a good thing. So I think we should really study in depth what is going on in Brazil. That is really interesting. That is not known to the rest of the world sufficiently because it is complicated and it's still a process going on. I'm still a learner also from my Brazilian students and from talks in the evening with Serial and Pedro and others. But they instituted a dynamic minimum wage which, according to standard textbooks, has normally negative employment effects. The opposite seems to be the case in Brazil. And it is obviously the benchmark wage level for other low wages, not above the minimum wage, but close to the minimum wage. And this has a huge macroeconomic impact on domestic demand because it leads to low-income households to purchase stuff like fridges, like electrical appliances, simple things that can be produced and are produced to a big extent in Brazil, with some protectionist tariffs, but also some imports from China and elsewhere. But this boosts domestic demand, and that is what we need. That is what we need in China. That is what we need in India. You should study this in India. So that really would be helpful to. I remember you reported that the unskilled low wage is constant at 50,000 rupees a year, in real terms constant over a long period. This is not development. That is zero development. That is non-inclusive growth. And this has to be changed and it can be changed. So I think I very much plea for this, and we need it also in the add something we forgot. That is the climate change problem, which of course is important for the next decade or the next 2 decades. And this will change the world economy if we take it serious. And it will change the world economy also if we do not take it serious. Because now the talk is, if I get it right, about the rail in temperature increases of 3.5 degrees. And that is likely to be disastrous. And so what is necessary from my observations is that emerging countries take on, due to their industrial structure, they are highly industrialized countries, with the exception of India, which has only 12% or so of GDP manufacturing, but they are strongly industrialized countries. In the meantime, they must take on responsibility for reducing CO2. And to a stronger extent than it was in the very vague commitments they gave in Copenhagen and later on. So to just blame the United States or Europe is good, is necessary, but it is not enough. They themselves must take on more activity. And then the least developed countries, about which we are not so much talking today, because we focus on those developing countries which are non-least or emerging, they need much more. If I follow Touch reports and others, they need much more financial support in the form of aid for adaptation. Because I had a student who worked on Bangladesh, and the expected increase of the sea level in that country, which leads to huge loss of land as an extreme case, and high density populated country, mass migration is perhaps necessary, which is extremely expensive. They cannot afford to do it on their own. So the whole aid structure in the world has to be changed. And there are huge challenges which we do not take sufficiently into consideration if we talk about the future of emerging economies.
Thank you.
I think what Ankit actually says is that climate change is not a threat, and one should not focus on aid and adaptation, but it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for diversification and for growth.
Thank you. That's a very positive. Just to add on this dynamics and minimum wage, when we were still at Board of Investment, together with Professor Paul Roma and the Singaporean government, we started some initial discussions with the industry to find out whether we can have minimum wage policy, which is much higher than what it is right now. The findings from the industry does not support that one, and as such, this discussion has been stopped. But we did initiate 18 months of discussions regarding coming up with a minimum wage policy for Mauritius, which is going to be higher, where we would be giving higher wages, just like Singapore does, for their own people. So, but that has now been stalled. But I understand that Professor Roma and a few more economists have joined hands with the Board of Investment for the next round of things. But yes, when I was at the Board of Investment, we did look at that. We heard so many good things about Brazil. And you're going to be enlighten us on the issues raised. One regarding reshoring, whether it poses a challenge, and others teach us about this new.
Of course, the minimum wage has a strong effect on Brazil. The recovery of consumption that was combined with some workers that was informal, go to the formal sector, and of course it has a strong effect on consumption, employment, and Maybe in 2007 and 2008, after 5 years of growth of consumption, after 20 years, the enterprise started to invest again because the growth of the market. 6 months before the crisis, the production of Brazilian firms of machinery was growing at 20% a year. 20%.
Capital.
The capital goods. That's very strong growth just because we are entering in a new cycle lead like of investments. Unfortunately, in September, the crisis started. Well, after the crisis, the minimum wage continues to grow. The employment is very high, but what is different from the previous period? The difference is that the consumption is still growing, not so high level as in the past, but the consumption was growing, but the industrial production was flat. And the imports of manufacturing goods was very high. And basically, because we were trying to compete with China, but I'll talk with businessmen that told me that the Chinese machinery producers was selling capital goods in Brazil for less than half the price of Brazilian producers, with finance of the Bank of China, finance, but not but finance in real, in domestic currency, lower than BNDES, lower than the Brazilian development bank. It's very tough to compete with this kind of situation. Then I return to my question. Of course, the domestic market is important, but at the same time, I agree with my colleague that sometimes we have to have the capacity to get the benefits of this general market growth. Because the competition after 2008 and 2009 is not a normal competition. It's a very fierce competition. This is here. And this, of course, if you have minimum wage but you don't have employment, the cycle is not possible to return. Related to the reshoring, I think that it's important to understand the model of growth of the United States in the 90s, in the end of the 90s, and the first part of 2000s. Basically, was a growth based in consumption, but the income for the consumption came from the financial market, not from normal employment or profits. Was based on the asset valuation of the financial markets, and then we had to get some money from the financial market to consume things that was being produced in China, Bangladesh, or something. Then you have a split between income and production, industrial production. The problem is that it's impossible after the crisis. It's impossible to have this kind of growth in the United States. Have some employment to start to grow again. And then I think that this reshoring is very possible, as well as more industrial policy that will try to accelerate the spend on R&D and to have innovative industry in the United States. But again, we'll face the competition in the global market.
Thank you, Sergio. Madam Kunayan?
Yeah, I will be short. Just I wanted to comment on the income distribution and growth aspect. I think for a country like Mauritius, where the Gini coefficient has been rising, and we don't know yet the recent figures from the household budget survey, but I think the two go together rather than choosing between income distribution and growth. And regarding your reshoring one, I'm not an expert on that field, but maybe we should see in terms of the employment implication of wages and impact on income as well. And for Mauritius, as a small island developing state, climate change is likely to be an issue, and I think that we should move more towards thinking about sustainable development as well as inclusive growth, with income distribution being in the picture rather than focusing only on the growth performance.
Thank you. I think we are dot on time. I would imagine there must be some craving to say a few words, but I will not allow that one because it's exactly 6:30 and we're supposed to end. I think it's been very high caliber discussion, issues raised regarding touching markets, geographical markets with regards to sectors that are emerging with regards to green growth. Regarding to sustainable development, regarding to investment. I think that was good. On behalf of the University of Mauritius, I would like to thank the four panelists today, Jan, Sergio, York, and Mrs. Kunayan. I'd like to ask for a round of applause for our ladies, please. I hand over to Obi.
Yeah, just hand that in. Thank you very much for today, and thank you again for your sponsorship.
So pleasure to all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me.